Perhaps the first many of us ever heard of nuclear in any sort of form was the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki in World War II. That was when the true destructive power of nukes was truly shown to the world, with hundreds of thousands dying and casualties remaining for decades to come. So it might be kind of odd to think of that same destructive energy in any sort of form being reused to simply power the hustle we live in today. Yet, that's what the future seems to be holding for us as a society, as more and more places come closer and closer to realizing the ideal of nuclear energy. But the issue is, how feasible is it? How practical is it? Is it going to happen? And that leads us to today's prompt. How optimistic should we be about the future prospects of nuclear fusion energy? We can answer the question by saying that we should be very optimistic for a variety of reasons. First of all, more and more countries are becoming more and more receptive to nuclear energy. Secondly, nuclear energy is a much more secure source of energy than other forms. Finally, we are becoming more and more efficient at extracting more and more energy out of nuclear fusion sources. A lo- with the greatest measure of our optimism should be in the form of how other countries, or our own country, is becoming more and more receptive towards nuclear energy. One look at an article written by the New York Times on January 30, 2023, they talk about the idea that in the last 10 years, the amount of countries that have become more receptive to nuclear energy have started investing in nuclear energy has risen by 12%. This is a huge number when looking at the amount of populations of the countries that can afford to invest in nuclear energy, showing us that the top statisticians, top experts of energy are understanding the capability that nuclear energy has to change the world. They understand its efficiency, they understand its power, and the ability it brings for a country to really revolutionize itself industrial wise. And as a result, the numbers are clear. A 12% increase in the last 10 years. But that's not all. When looking at an article by the New Yorker on January 15th, 2023, they talk about how they expect that in the next 10 years, this number to increase by another 14%. That's even higher than what's on the past 10 years. This indicates to us that these countries, as more and more become more developed, they're trying to find more and more optimal ways to harness energy to make this more cheaper so they can have better resources made and transported. And nuclear fusion energy is the best way to do that, as seen by these numbers today. Now that we know that countries are receptive to this kind of marketing, this kind of energy, next step is to see why is it so good? Well, first of all, we can look at the fact that it's a much more secure source of energy. When looking at an article by The Guardian on December 3rd, 2022, talk about the idea that nuclear energy can lead us away from fossil fuels, which are running out, to a more secure, renewable resource such as nuclear energy. Now, again, while it might seem dangerous and irresponsible to something like a nuclear energy to power something like a house, at the end of the day, this form of nuclear energy is rather safe. It's more secure and it won't be susceptible to running out like fossil fuels are. But there's more to this than just that. When looking at the article by the Huffington Post on December 4th, 2022, they mentioned the idea that nuclear energy is becoming something that's more and more accessible to more and more places. As people invest more and more into it, it's becoming a more secure source of energy for people to harness. Because of this, many nuclear energy plants in places like the United States are becoming more and more efficient at harnessing energy. Because of this, it's becoming more secure for us to use them as energy sources, creating a cycle where more and more places are becoming more receptive to this energy. And that's our first point. Secondly, we're seeing how they're becoming. Secondly, we're seeing how these places are seeing it's more secure, how it's taking away from the limited amount of fossil fuels to a unlimited, more widely accessible form of nuclear energy. This also takes away a lot of issues when it comes to creating this energy, as we're able to no longer fight over things like oil or fossil fuels, instead finding a different source that's more easily able to be obtained. Finally, we have to examine the idea that nuclear energy is something that is very efficient, already more and more efficient at harnessing it as time goes on. When looking at an article written by NPR News on January 15th, 2023, they talk about the idea that nuclear energy is becoming something that's more and more, we're extracting more and more of it for every time we have. What this basically I'm trying to say is that as time goes on, we're able to become more and more efficient with how we view nuclear energy. The amount we were able to extract from a set amount 10 years ago is not even half what we're able to do today. The strides we've made in the last decade when it comes to nuclear fusion energy has been immense, and they will continue to be so in the future. When looking at an article written by NBC News on January 13th, 2023, talking about the idea that nuclear fusion energy seems to be the future of America and the world as we know it, because of the fact that it's more easy, because of the fact that it's very cheap when it comes to per dollar amounts. When look at things like fossil fuels and oil, they're getting more and more expensive as the quantity decreases. But nuclear energy doesn't suffer that kind of same fate. As a result, the efficiency of it increasing will lead to the price of it decreasing. And due to being a renewable resource, the price, the hopeful future of its efficiency seems more and more bright for the world. And when it comes to prices, the cheaper it is, the more likely people are to buy it. Even if some might have reservations about the source of its energy or any what side effects it might have, despite how unfounded these claims might be, the cheaper prices are definitely going to sway the minds of quite a few, showing us that the efficiency that's coming out will make us very optimistic for the future of nuclear energy. So today, we examine the question of how optimistic should we be for the future prospect of nuclear fusion energy, which we answer by saying that we should be very optimistic, and we saw three major reasons why. First of all, we examined the fact that more and more places around the world are becoming more receptive to nuclear energy, showing that its widespread use is very something to make us very optimistic about it. Secondly, we examine the fact that it's a much more secure energy source, meaning that as more people realize its true value, it'll become much more apparent and and the future will be much more secured. Finally, we examine the idea that it's much more efficient to use nuclear energy, and that we as a species have become much more efficient at extracting nuclear energy, meaning that as time goes on, the amount of money cost to invest in nuclear energy will decrease. Compared to the increasing prices of fossil fuels, will lead to a situation where it's very obvious to us society what we should favor. All in all, looking at these facts today, it's hard to argue anything except the idea that nuclear energy prospects are very optimistic. Seeing the future that we have and the way that things have been going in the last decade, it seems very evident for the world that nuclear energy seems to become a very more profitable, very efficient source of energy for us to harness. As a reason, its futures in the world as an energy source seem very, very optimistic. Thank you.